For 160 million years, the dinosaurs ruled the planet. From their humble progenitors in the Triassic to the tyrant lizard king of the late Cretaceous, Dinosauria was a clade unmatched in its dominion. And then, 66 million years ago, that came to an abrupt and near total end. With the sole exception of aves, every clade of dinosaur went extinct. But what if they hadn't? Dragons of the Cenozoic follows the development of a world where the K-Pg event took place, but where a little bit of luck allowed a handful of species of non-avian dinosaurs to survive in a refugium in eastern Antarctica. This is the story of how the greatest dynasty the world has ever known recovered in a world it no longer ruled.
Late autumn snow lightly dusts the Sobral landscape, its delicate crystals catching the slanted polar light. The sky is watercolor wash with shades of peach, violet, and yellow, the sun threatening to vanish from the heavens as the long night of winter draws ever closer. Below the open sky, a male Seratorostrum uses his uniquely shaped beak to pull at an Araucaria branch. The large, asymmetrically arranged protrusions on his upper beak interlock with the smaller ones on his lower, efficiently stripping the small needle-like leaves off the conifer in a single tugging motion. At 45 kilograms and nearly 3.5 times larger than his ancestor Omegadromius, this buck represents one of the largest terrestrial animals on the planet in this post-impact world. Here in his Antarctic kingdom, no carnivore, mammalian, or theropod poses a genuine threat, allowing him to feed with a leisure unknown to his diminutive ancestors. Not far from him, one of his only rivals in terms of sheer bulk nibbles at lower branches. At 35 kilograms, the robust Gondwanathere Musvidus cothondonta could be a formidable opponent in a territorial dispute. But there is little need for these two herbivores to act as adversaries. Their respective ecological niches have minimal overlap, and evolutionary accommodation reached long before the Chicxulub impact created this new world. Unlike more derived ornithopods, these Paleogene Elasmarians lack the complex dental batteries that propelled hadrosaurids to ecological dominance in the pre-K-Pg world, positioning them mostly for a browsing lifestyle. Musvidus's high-crowned teeth may bring it into resource competition with the Thyreophore and Hoplophosphorus, but no such tension exists between the capybara-like Gondwanathere and our buck. As the morning advances, our Elasmarian moves through the shadow-cast forest. His dark, bristly feathers ruffle in the gentle breeze, their charcoal coloration affording effective camouflage in the dappled shadows cast by the conifers. With each exhalation, small clouds of condensation form around his nostrils, testament to the significant metabolic machinery required to maintain his endothermic physiology. This is not the bitter, lethal cold of later Antarctica. Indeed, it may be warmer than the pre-K-Pg environment his smaller ancestors evolved in. But with the end of autumn comes the months of night, and a cold that envelops the continent. As the sun hangs fat in the sky, our buck encounters a small group of female Seratorostrum. Their appearance largely mirrors his own, with one exception: his prominent crimson wattle. The fleshy appendage hanging from his face sways slightly with his every movement, a turkey-like structure that serves as a secondary sexual characteristic. During the breeding season, this wattle signals his health and fitness to potential mates. The group of females acknowledges his presence with a subtle head bob, but continues their foraging largely undisturbed. The social structure of Seratorostrum consists of loose familial associations rather than cohesive herds, a middle ground between solitary living and the more complex organizations of their descendants. These animals, while significantly larger than their immediate K-Pg ancestors, are not proportionately more intelligent. Like many of their mammalian contemporaries, their bodies have expanded dramatically in size, but their brains show only modest enlargement. It will be many millions of years before these Elasmarians approach the relative intelligence of their extinct hadrosaurid cousins. If indeed they ever do. Evolution selects for sufficient solutions, not optimal ones, and in the predator-scarce environment of Paleocene Antarctica, the cognitive demands are modest. The afternoon light brings our buck to a stand of taller conifers with particularly rich foliage. Here he braces his forelimbs against the trunk to stabilize himself while reaching for higher branches. His longer forelimbs and blunt claws offer secure purchase against the rough bark as he uses his large size to reach foliage few other animals on the continent can feed from. The fat deposits visible along his tail and hindquarters have noticeably increased over recent weeks, energy stored in molecular form for the approaching winter when resources will become scarce. During peak winter, he will likely enter a state of torpor, reducing his metabolic demands while subsisting on these fat reserves. One of the features that made Elasmarians so successful in southern Gondwana was their rapid growth rates following periods of arrested growth caused by pauses during resource-scarce periods. Paleontologists know this because of patterns in their cortical fibrolamellar tissue. LAGs, or lines of arrested growth found in the bones of these basal ornithopods, show a significant amount of plasticity in how these animals responded to environmental conditions. As the Antarctic day draws to a close, our buck seeks shelter in a copse of dense conifers, where the accumulated biomass provides insulation against the falling temperatures. His dark gray feathered form dissolves into the shadows as he settles, the distinctive red wattle tucked close to his neck as he rests for the evening. Even as our buck begins his slumber, the Antarctic forest refuses to sleep alongside him. There is too much to do before the months of winter night set upon the continent. Beneath the interwoven canopy of southern beeches and spiky monkey puzzle trees, where seasons' worth of detritus cushions every footfall, another Elasmarian navigates the polar landscape. At the edge of a seep, a stout figure moves with purpose. Baradromius rhizopodos claws at the earth, its broad feet raking through the leaf litter and root mats to unearth a fat tuber. Its heavy beak shears into the fibrous mass once it's unearthed, slicing through tough, dirt-caked root. Ahead of the long night, calories must be hoarded as efficiently as possible. Short, muscular hind limbs powered by a comparatively large caudal femoralis, a robust femur paired with a stunted tibia, and a heavy tail anchoring its balance all work together to help our little Elasmarian efficiently root through the leaf litter for its next meal. Speed has been walked back for power. Not far off, a lighter shape weaves between saplings. Baradromius fragilis's slender, leggy frame is ill-suited for digging, but perfect for swiftly moving through the forest undergrowth as it nips at the tender shoots of young Nothofagus and podocarps. Its narrow skull and lithe body mark it as a more choosy feeder than its cousin, threading through the understory to exploit the Paleocene autumn's last offerings before it sequesters itself in a den for much of the approaching Antarctic night. These two Baradromius sprung from a common ancestor and have diverged like streams from a single spring, on occasion still flowing into each other as uneven colonization of South America and Australia forces the different species to occasionally breed with one another. Though they retain many shared characteristics, and the untrained eye would be pressed to identify them as separate species, the two streams will continue to diverge as they grow more distinct from one another and give rise to new genera. The early stages of divergence are often not as dramatic as those seen in the Rahanavians, which have been so fragmented by their choice of arboreality, terrestriality, carnivory, and herbivory. But the early divergences in these two species will only continue to compound. Among the gnarled brush at the clearing's fringe, a shadow stirs, Sarcobelodon imperator. A non-therian mammal no larger than a fox crouches patiently. At 8 kilos, it is small, but fearsome and more than capable of felling prey nearly thrice its size. The forest's scents drift across its twitching nose, its eyes sharp in the low light, a trait honed by the nocturnal bottleneck caused by the Dinosaurian yoke, as it fixes on Rhizopodos. Though the Elasmarian outweighs it, Sarcobelodon prepares to strike. Beneath parted lips, its saber-like teeth hang ready to deliver a single surgical strike to windpipe an artery. The predator shifts, muscles taut beneath its thickening winter pelt, but survival is more than just a matter of violence. Rhizopodos snaps its head, sensing a wrongness in the air's scent, and bolts, hind limbs churning leaf litter into a fleeting storm. Though it's traded speed for power, its robust leg musculature still propels it up and away in an almost hopping-like motion before it lands and breaks into a sprint. The saber-toothed weasel lunges a heartbeat too late, teeth slicing at empty air as its quarry vanishes into the tangled dark. His warm breath pluming in the cool air, the hunter pauses, another pursuit ending in frustration. Yet this is not his first failure, nor will it be his last. Hunger still gnawing at his belly, he lopes back into the underbrush to search for his next prey. Across the clearing, Fragilis too has fled from the commotion, making its way to a low tunnel carved by its previous occupier beneath a beech's roots. In that insulated dark, it will bide its time, safe from the prowling carnivore, until the need to forage drives it out once more. Hello everyone, Finn here. Thanks for liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing the Elasmarians of the Sobral Formation, Seratorostrum gelidus, Baradromius rhizopodos, Baradromius fragilis, and Cryognathus parvus. First, we'll look at the largest of the Elasmarians, Seratorostrum gelidus, the serrated beaked cold dweller. Seratorostrum's name comes from the asymmetrical serrations on its beak, similar to those of Tethysciadros. The upper jaw bears larger, curved projections that interlock with the smaller, sharper ones on the lower jaw. This creates an efficient cutting mechanism, perfectly suited for processing tough conifer needles and their woody stems. Behind the beak, a single row of broad, leaf-shaped teeth with rough wear surfaces serves for grinding. While not as impressive as the dental batteries that characterize hadrosaurs, these teeth function adequately for processing fibrous plant material after the beak performs the initial stripping. The postcranial skeleton reveals adaptations for a slower, more deliberate lifestyle in an environment largely devoid of significant predator pressures. The hind limbs maintain a bipedal stance, as it will be some time before we see quadrupedal giants, but they're stouter than those of its ancestors. The leg bones show increased thickness to support this new body mass, and the foot bones are shorter and more robust. This is clear evidence of an animal that has prioritized stability and power over speed. In a world without significant predators, there is little selective advantage to fleeing quickly, better to conserve energy and stand firm. The forelimbs show modifications suited for a browsing lifestyle. The humerus has a slightly enlarged attachment site for pectoral musculature, providing stronger muscles to manipulate vegetation. The rib cage is deeper and wider, accommodating a larger digestive tract, necessary for breaking down the nutrient-poor conifer leaves. The neural spines of the vertebra are taller, providing attachments for stronger musculature to stabilize the body when rearing up for prolonged feeding sessions. This more robustly built and less speedy animal is not just an upscaled descendant of Omegadromius. Instead, it has rapidly evolved to fill a very different niche from its ancestor. The next pair of Elasmarians have to be discussed together because of their problematic classification history. Baradromius rhizopodos, the root-footed heavy runner, was one of the first species identified in the Sobral Formation, with the early material ascribed to it being several disarticulated foot bones, a femur fragment, and several vertebrae. Later digs produced more material, including 2 partial dentaries, a partial tibia, and a nearly complete femur. However, many years later, when this material was being examined again in the Antarctic Natural History Museum of Henrieville, several issues became apparent. While the two known dentaries were similar, it was fairly clear that one was more robustly built than the other, and that while some of the teeth present in the robust dentary matched with some of the disarticulated teeth, they didn't match with others that were ascribed to the species. Similarly, differences were spotted between the femur materials, which showed that the earlier partial femur was indicative of a shorter, more squat femur, while the latter more complete femur was thinner, more like that of an Omegadromius. This led to the erection of a new species, Baradromius fragilis, using the more gracile femur and dentary. However, subsequent papers have argued that the two species actually represent different morphs of the same animal, possibly an artifact of sexual dimorphism. One part of the separate genera argument points to the fact that the histology shows the femur bone of B. fragilis belongs to a juvenile despite its size, suggesting that the adult may have been considerably larger, possibly near the size of Seratorostrum. This would be interesting, as while Seratorostrum quickly began to lose some of its more specialized running traits, B. fragilis retained this cursoriality. This conflict mirrors some of the disagreements in paleontology in our world, like the debate over the validity of Nanotyrannus. The other identified Elasmarian of the Sobral is Cryognathus parvus. Though the single specimen of Cryognathus appears to have been a subadult that had yet to fully mature, it looks to have been much smaller than its ancestor Omegadromius, rivaling even the tiny Jurassic heterodontosaur Brutidens for the title of smallest ornithischian. The large jugal flanges of the animal have led some to speculate that it may be a very basal altobuccinid. However, sparse but identifiable postcranial material lacks any of the key identifiers of that later arboreal clade. While it is not outside of the realm of possibility that Cryognathus is the most basal altobuccinid, it's just as likely that the jugal flanges present are an example of convergence. What is known from the small animal is that it was likely an omnivore, using its heavy beak to prey on insects and crack open seeds and fruit from the Antarctic trees. Though speciation has clearly begun to drive changes in the surviving Elasmarians, it seems to be more muted than in the Paleocene theropods, which have radiated into a diverse number of niches, while these omnivorous but herbivorous-leaning animals lag behind in their general diversification. It will be some time before we see these more basal and generalized forms replaced by more derived, specialized species of the later Paleocene. Next video, we will take a look at the 5 Gondwanatheres and single monotreme of the formation, as we see how interspecific competition with small dinosaurs and the absence of large dinosaurs and crocodilians impacts these mammals. I also want to give a quick shout out to M for the incredible art of Baradromius being chased through the snow by Sarcobelodon. It just looks so beautiful. Alrighty then, that's it for now. See you all very soon, hopefully.